Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Bear Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Coach Cub. I am thrilled for you to be here. I am very grateful for all of you who have been tuning into the podcast, or if this is your first time, welcome. I've been having a lot of really insightful, fun conversations in the previous episodes, and today is no different. So I have a fun episode to share with you as I sat down with Kyle Jackson, who is the deputy editor for BEARWELL magazine and the host of their podcast, which is the BEARWELL podcast. So much bear terms in these intros and these episodes. get lost in all of it, but really great podcast. I was a guest on that podcast recently, so I got to be interviewed by Kyle. And I just really love his energy. It's very cuddly and smooth, and he's all around a really cool guy. So it was great to sit down with him, learn more about his background in acting and how he got involved in BEARWELL over the last year, and really get to chatting about all types of topics related to how to define what the bear community is, what a bear is, how to make it more inclusive. So we get to chat through all these things that are interesting to me, and hopefully you'll find interesting as well. So all that will be covered in today's episode. Outside of the podcast, as you probably know, we have a lot of other great things going on. So there's different opportunities to interact with me and my bear group. I've been doing health coaching for years, but over the last few months, I've really kind of taken on more clients because it is my primary passion. So working with men in the United States, but also in many countries abroad. If you want to learn more about my coaching and book a complimentary 15-minute session with me to get some clarity on where you're at, come up with some action steps, a mini plan as you walk away from the session, you can learn more about me and connect with me on Instagram at coach.cub. Ooh, I need more coffee. So you can find me there. And then also all of the bear events that I run weekly, virtually. So we have bear meditation on Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern, bear fitness on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And then usually we do a gentle or beginner's bear yoga on Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. We'd love for you to join us. Everything's on a very small sliding scale, and there's no equipment needed, no experience needed. It's a really, really supportive environment and group. So we'd love for you to join us. You can learn more about that at our bear group Instagram, which is pod. So it's at pawednyc. So again, at pawednyc. Or you can connect with us here at the podcast to learn more about kind of what we're doing, share your feedback, let us know what topics you're interested in hearing about, and you can connect with us on our Instagram, which is at Bear Wellness Pod. So many different ways to connect, but if you find any of those Instagrams, I know there's 3 of them, they all kind of link to each other. So you can, connect with us in many different ways, but we'd love to hear from you regardless. And then lastly, as you know from previous episodes, we're a huge fan of recess drinks here at the podcast. So recess is like a hemp extract drink that it has a lot of adaptogens in it to help our body handle stress, which I think we can all use a little bit of a hand with in 2020. So the folks at Recess are really cool. They gave everyone who listens to this podcast a 15% off discount if you order through their website, which is takearecess.com. So again, takearecess.com, and use the promo code BEARWELL. So BEARWELL. Whew, all right. Glad I got all that over with. So now you can enjoy the episode. Again, I very much appreciate you. Certainly reach out to us. Write a review on Apple Podcasts so we can get your feedback and connect with you. And otherwise, I hope you have a fabulous time listening to this. I wish you well through the rest of 2020 or into 2021 if you're listening to this in the future. And I'm sending everyone a big virtual Cub hug. See you soon. Right, welcome everyone to the Bear Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Cub, and with us today, I'm super excited to talk to Kyle, hey Kyle,
Hey.
who's got the best podcast voice in the world. I'm like super jealous over here.
Stop. No.
But yeah, I'm excited to sit down with Kyle. I was on Kyle's podcast. He's the host of the Bear World podcast. That's
hmm
like the podcast affiliated with Bear World magazine.
Yes.
So I was on that. So now we get to do a role reversal, and I get to interview you.
Yeah.
And I've seen you at some of our pod events. You're at
hmm
our Cuddle Pile and
Yeah.
Bear Yoga back when we could do it in person. Then you came to a pod meditation the other day. So
Yeah.
seen you in those environments, chatted with you on the podcast. But I'd love to sit down and learn more about you. I believe you're an actor, a writer for
Yes.
Bear World magazine,
Yes.
podcaster.
hmm
So yeah, it'd just be great to kind of have a chat here.
Cool.
Excited for you to be here.
So yeah, I'm so like really happy. I'm happy to be here. I like doing this type of stuff. Um, and yeah, so I definitely I work for Bearwell magazine right now. I'm the host of the Bearwell podcast. I'm also deputy editor of Bearwell magazine. So like I'm like second in command to the editor. And of course I write for them. I literally just started working with them probably like it was just last year. It seems so much longer than that, but it was just last year.
Really?
Yeah, I started working with them in the summer of 2019. And like I literally just messaged them. I was like, hey, I'm a writer. I, like doing stuff in the bear community. I do identify as a bear too. Hey, what's up? And
You up?
I just literally just like messaged them like, hey, what's up? And it was actually just like on Messenger. It wasn't even like formal. It was just on Messenger. And Richard Jones, who is the creator, the CEO of Bearwell magazine and Queer 40 magazine, which is another one in the magazines in our umbrella. He was like, yeah, just send me your resume, and I was like, okay, cool. So I sent it to him, and I wasn't really expecting to hear anything back, but I sort of bugged him, like I poked him a little bit until he
Mhm.
just like decided to meet up with me, and we met up and we like really hit it off with what we were chatting about, and like what he was impressed with, like what I was able to do and what I was able to bring to the table, and we just like started talking, and I just started working with him. I met Robin Gray, who was the editor of Bearwell magazine and also the editor and founder of Gaming magazine, who
Okay.
is another magazine in our umbrella. There's three. And Robin met with me, and I was like, look, Robin, I know you edit gaming magazine. I'm really not that much into gaming. Like I play video games, but like I really am not much of a gamer, so I don't know if I can help. But that's he's like, well, what do you know about the bear world? So we talked about bear, and Robin actually lives in England. So
Mhm.
this is when I was in England that summer 2019 to see my partner, who is British.
Yeah.
And I was there, and that's how I met up with him. So the three of us, sort of work, from across the pond from one another.
Sure.
Richard is also British, but he lives here in New York with his husband, and Robin is British, and he lives in the United Kingdom with his partner. So we all just kind of work. It's the three of us, and we kind of work together. We now have Marin Johns, who was the editor of Curve magazine, who's joined Queer 40 magazine as editor in chief. So she's with the team now, and we just have a whole bunch of other people who are about to come and like make some stuff happen. So we're trying to make a lot happen. We have like a production company now with Bear World magazine that's starting up, and we're going to be like producing TV shows and all of this stuff. So we have a lot of stuff lined up.
Amazing. Oh, that's so helpful to know too, because I'm like, I've known Bear World magazine for probably 3 or 4 years since I started Pod,
Yeah.
my group, and because we had some kind of deal. I think we were advertising on the magazine, and they
hmm
wrote about us a bunch. but I've never been able to really understand the Bear world.
Yes.
Now I know. So,
Yes.
and I didn't realize that you started just about a year ago. So
Yeah, it seems like so much longer, but like I started out just writing, and then they were like, "We want you to be on the team. We want you to come and be the deputy editor." And I was like, "Oh, sure, that's great. Whatever. Yeah, I'm with it." So yeah, it's been a really, really, really fun sort of ride. We had our challenges with the pandemic, like everybody else. But we're bouncing back. Like I said, we got the TV production stuff happening, and we are getting in there.
you're taking over the world.
We're taking over the world. Get ready. We're taking over the world.
That's so cool. So you're writer, editor, podcaster, and your background is it in acting? We're gonna cover all of this. So I'm just
Yeah,
trying
yeah,
to get a
yeah.
sense of.
Yeah, so my background. So yeah, I'm an actor, podcaster. Of course I got into, they came when we decided to do the Bear World podcast. They were like, well, we know you're going to host it, because like they were like, oh, we like your personality. I guess I have a good voice for it, since it's what you're telling me. And so they were like, basically it was like sort of like, well, that you're going to be the host, right? And I was like, sure, yeah, cool. I've never done podcasting before, but I'm pretty sure I could do it. And so we just ended up like sort of getting that together. This was like during the pandemic, when we were trying to like, you know, um, just keep everything afloat, because everything, like, people, keeping people up, like keeping people. I think the thing about Bear World is that we are very community like centered. You know, um, our platform and everything that we do is sort of like about the community, and so we just wanted to, like, we were looking for different ways to sort of like keep people engaged and keep people like upbeat, and like we wanted the podcast to be fun, but also like sort of address certain topics that are important. So they when they came to me with the idea, I was just like, sure, yeah, absolutely. So we started doing that. My background, you were talking about in acting. So basically I started off in theater, and that's probably where you said my voice is cool for this. That's probably where the training from that came, because like I started in theater when I was in high school, and I just started doing like different plays and shows, and in what do you call it, sort of like the little open mic nights and things that they would have at school and stuff, and I would do monologues and Shakespeare and stuff like that. People were like, oh, you're so good. So I decided to audition for some stuff, and I just really got into it, and I ended up majoring in theater when I was in college. So I have a degree. I have a degree in theater, and with a focus primarily on performance. But because I was into the theater, and because I was noticing that there weren't a lot of roles, for not just for people of color or Black people, but there weren't a lot of roles for larger people. And I've always been, sort of on the larger side.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, that's how I kind of got into writing. So I decided, I'm going to start writing things, because if people like me are going to have roles, then it's going to be because people like me wrote those roles, and people like me are, right. So I decided that I wanted to do that, and from writing it, like I've done a couple plays. One of my plays premiered in New York in 2014 at the Fresh Fruits Festival. It was just called Simply Boy. And it was about a young gay Black male growing up. And we did that for that festival. I've had a couple readings of it.
Was that sorry to interrupt it.
No, no.
Was that based on your childhood, that play?
So yeah, it was very loosely based on, and I say that because like because I was telling people that it was based on my childhood at first, but I wasn't telling people that there were a lot of things like that I embellished and like, there's some things in the play that people are like, did that really happen to you? And I'm like, I have to say no, that didn't happen to me like that, because they're like, that's pretty intense. And I'm like, not that bad. It didn't happen that bad. I embellished a little bit, but it's very loosely based on my childhood growing up in the South, in New Orleans, where I'm from.
Okay.
And it basically just shows like, I think from a different perspective, because around the time that this play was being read, like I did it in 2014, and I shelved it, and it didn't get read again until when I was in Philadelphia in 2016, and it got read, and everybody at that time kept drawing comparisons between my play and in Moonlight.
Oh, right.
And they were like, this is very similar to Moonlight. And I kept saying, like, I wrote this play before Moonlight came out. And I love Moonlight because one of the writers on Moonlight is one of my favorite playwrights, Terrell Elvin McCraney. And he won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay for that movie. So I love it. But I was like, no, it's not based on that, and but like that's why I kind of like put it up again. So now I'm revisiting it now a few years later. But
And say the name one more time.
it's just Boy.
Boy. Okay.
Yeah, I may change it, depending on but it's also based on a short story that I wrote called it's called Flying Through the Stars. Sorry, Flying Through the Stars, and that book is actually, that story is actually going to be published in a book. My friend Dudrick Bevins, who also writes for Queer 40 and who was on the BEARWELL podcast a few weeks ago, he started he's based in New York, and he started a book publishing company, and basically it's a book of stories of queer writers from the South, because he's from the South, I'm from the South, and he knew a whole bunch of queer artists and writers from the South, and so he compiled this book together with all of these queer writers and artists. It's an anthology called We Make Our Own Light. So my story is going to be in that anthology. I know that was a lot, but
that's, first of all, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's super impressive. I love we're off to the races. You're like, boom, you're prolific, man.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah. I always love to ask this up top because, when you interview someone, it's usually about like, all the great things that they're good at and the things that they may be experts in. So I always like to ask, like, what's one thing that you're not so good at? Because before I ask, I'm gonna say, and I know you're good at all those things. And then I just saw your sexy Santa Claus photo, so I know that you're good at modeling.
And modeling.
Sexy,
I guess I'm a model now.
Sexy Santa Claus in the harness, and I need to know more about that story. But,
Yeah.
What's like one or two things that like you're just not so good at?
Let me see. What can I be not so great at?
You're like nothing.
I know I'm very I'm very anxious, so I'm not.
You and me both.
Yeah, so I'm not that great with handling my anxiety sometimes. My anxiety sort of gets
Girl, you're speaking my language.
And I'm probably not so great, to be completely honest with you. And a lot of people will probably find this surprising because I do so much, but I'm really not that great with time management. I'm really not that great. And it's probably one of my best kept secrets for people who don't work with me. Hint, hint, Richard and Robin from BEARWELL magazine. But but to people who don't work with me, they probably don't know that I'm not like I don't manage my time, and I think that has a lot to do with my anxiety as well. So yeah, those are probably two of the things that I'm not that great at.
Well, I can completely relate, and I think you and I hit it off when you interviewed me. We talked a bit about anxiety and mental health, and I know we both have anxiety. And I'm also not great with time management. I do think it's tied into being anxious and being like I get worried about like Does this ever happen to you? It's like I'm worried about how things are going to turn out, so that I like delay them, or I don't do them. And
Yeah,
the like, even sitting down for this podcast, I'm like, I'm gonna this time I'm gonna like write all my notes, and I'm gonna like double check everything. And then it was still 5 minutes before, and I was scrambling, even
yeah,
though
yeah, yeah.
I know I need to do it, but
It's like you get worried that you're gonna like that something's gonna go wrong or something's gonna mess up. So like you hold off on it because you feel like, I don't know, in your mind you're trying to think of the best way to approach something before you start doing it. Because like for me, I know a lot of my issue too is that I want everything to be perfect because I'm anxious, because I'm like always worried about things not being great.
Mhm.
I kind of want things to be perfect. So because I want things to be perfect, I sort of like end up procrastinating because like I never know how to like get into whatever it is that I want to get into. I'm like, okay, I need to start this thing, but I can't do it now because like I need to have this in place before I do that. And why is this not right? Okay, I'm just gonna do it later when I
Yeah.
have more things. So like I end up doing that, and then like before I know it, it's like right before it's due and I'm doing something. And it's like I almost feel like sometimes I allow myself to get down to the last minute because I'm like, yeah, when I'm under pressure and I have to like push something, like it's gonna be the greatest thing ever. Just because I was so rushed doing it, it's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
And I don't know about you, but I also it's like delaying that negative feeling of being anxious. So I'm like, if I
Yeah,
sit down and I'm not trying to do something, I'm like, I'd rather just go do something else because
yeah,
I can't do that right now.
it's too much. Yeah.
And not to mention, I mean, acting, writing, podcasting,
Hmm.
all these things are like pretty subjective, and it's easy to have imposter syndrome. I mean, for me, just in general, not sure about you, but like, you're doing these things that like you really have to put everything you have into it to make sure you can display yourself in a good way. And
Yeah,
if you're
and you,
anxious about that, it can become too much.
yeah, I'm glad you said imposter syndrome because that's totally it. Like this idea that sometimes you have this idea that creeps up in your head, like, oh, I'm doing all of these great things, but am I really that great? Because you know what I'm saying, like, and just being afraid that like you're presenting yourself the wrong way, like people are getting the wrong idea about you because like people see me doing all these great things, and I'm like, but they really don't know that I'm an anxious mess sometimes, and like,
Yeah.
and so they in their mind, I'm like this great person, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm a mess. You don't know me.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I feel very similar in my work of just like, I have to have a good handle on my anxiety in my life, and I coach people to do that. But it's easier to coach other people than to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
So people see you, and
exactly.
they're like, oh, he's so like calm, and I know he meditates, and you kind of build this story around who somebody is. And I'm like, bitch, if you knew me, I'm like
Yeah,
anxious a lot. I have panic attacks. Sometimes I get enraged because with my
yeah,
anger. And I'm like, but it's also just human. It's like
yeah.
these are human experiences that we all deal with. And I know I was on your podcast, we talked a lot about this because of the election was coming up.
Hmm.
So first of all, I was gonna say like, I haven't talked to you since the election is over. How are you feeling now?
I feel great. During those days leading up between Tuesday and Saturday of that week was really rough. It was really rough.
Yeah.
I was literally, I don't know if you saw my post on Facebook, but I wrote a post like somewhere in that 4 day window. I was like, I don't think I've ever refreshed Google as much as I have, and that was like really, that was real because like I was literally like, uh, to be honest with you, like I almost took a break from like even BEARWELL magazine that week. We did some things, but all of us were like just so, it was such an intense week for all of us,
Yeah.
and like I don't know, it just it, it, I was glad that the results came out the way that they did. Absolutely, I was glad, but I was also just very sort of like anxious that whole time.
Oh yeah. I did see your post about refreshing, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm like every half hour in the middle of the night I wake up, refresh election results, like just waiting, waiting, waiting. So
Hmm.
yeah, that was that really took our anxiety to the test.
Yes, absolutely.
So
But
you're feeling better now?
I feel better now. We got the right one in there, and I'm happy that we were able to do that. I'm happy that even though it was still too close for my comfort, like it should have been like Trump shouldn't have had any votes as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, I don't want to. Is this a podcast where I can say? Um,
Oh yeah, we have to speak our truth, and my truth is that I was anxious that he would get reelected for sure, and
yeah.
my whole thing is wellness for our community, and yeah, maybe there are some people who maybe are pro Trump, I don't know, but overall, for my mental health and the wellness, I think of this community, we need
Yeah.
somebody who favors inclusivity and is kind to others, and we need people who promote the queer community. And I just don't. We don't have to get too
Yeah.
political, but that just wasn't happening.
No, not with this. Not with that current. Well, that former administration. No.
Yes. So we're both all smiles now. All right.
Yeah. We're fine. We're fine about that.
Cool. So yeah, we relate on anxiety. I Before we kind of get maybe into like you kind of went through your story really fast, and there's a lot there. And
Sometimes when I start talking and I realize that I've talked for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, wow, this was a lot. That's why I told you, like, after I was talking, I was like, this was a lot, because like I don't really even think about like how much it is that I've done or that I'm doing until I start talking about it. And I'm like, Jesus, I'm talking a lot. This is a lot of information.
Which is good. It means that you've done a lot, which you have, and you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
But just in terms of like making sure I got the full story. So you grew up in New
Mm-hmm.
Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
What was childhood like? I mean, we all should watch the play and read the book, the story,
Yes.
but but it's not your full story. But yeah, just in general, like what was like growing up. I've never been to New Orleans,
Yeah.
which is
Oh,
crazy.
well, that after the pandemic, that's one of the things that you do, because New Orleans is a great city. Like, I mean, I still love it. I Some of my favorite cities in this country are the one that I live in now, which is New York City, and the one that I'm from, New Orleans. And oh, New Orleans is just very fun. It's like, and growing up there was just like, it was a mix of like, sort of, it wasn't too much conservatism, but there wasn't, for me particularly, there was an idea, because I grew up Catholic. And New Orleans, if well, Louisiana, not just New Orleans, but Louisiana in general, has the highest population of Black Catholics in the entire country. And that is because of the French and Spanish heritage, like the French and Spanish influence. So most of the people who were slaves, in New Orleans, are descendants of like the French and Spanish people, and because of that, a lot of Black people are still Catholic. So I grew up Catholic. I grew up in a Catholic church, but it wasn't like a really strict sort of upbringing. But there was still certain expectations. I grew up with a lot of expectations, and I think it was because my mom was a single mom when she had me, and she was also like living in a house with her mother, and the family dynamic was just there was a lot of there, I grew up around a lot of women, and I grew up around around a lot of Black women who were sort of like held me close. So I was in a way sheltered from a lot of the things, or shielded from a lot of the things that they thought were harmful. And because of that, I think I grew up knowing what love is, but also questioning my place in the world a little bit, and questioning who I was, and why I wanted to do the things I wanted to do. Why was I different? Why didn't I want to go outside and play with the rest of the boys? Why did I want to do this thing? And so like that play that I wrote kind of goes into a little bit of that, and then also addresses a lot of the fat phobia that I experienced as a child. Um, growing up, there was a lot of fat phobia, and uh, not just at school. Of course, kids at school were horrible sometimes, um, a lot of the time, but it was a lot of like, I had older people in my family who, how older people are. They see you after a while, and you walk into the house, and it's like, oh, you've gained a lot of weight, like, you gotten fat, and things like that, comments like that were thrown at me, and just learning how to deal with that and navigate that. So I was navigating a lot. I was navigating, growing up with a single mom. I was navigating, of course, being Black. I was navigating being fat. I was navigating coming into my sexuality, and just everything about me that was different. And so, it was really tough for a little while, but I think I got through it. But I did carry with me some of the scars, which I think are some of the things, the trauma that I carry with me, the things that still trigger me and stuff like that. So yeah.
And how did you navigate it? Like what, it sounds like you kind of went into some survival mode and kind of got through it, but it's a lot to work through, especially in formative years where you're like developing and navigating this world where you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I know I'm different. I'm being treated differently. I'm feeling different. Like one, how did you navigate that? And then two, like, what are some of the tools and things and the takeaways that and life lessons that you learned that are still with you now from it?
Um, the way I navigated it was I just sort of like went deeper into myself. I was a very introverted sort of uh to myself, all the time. I would, listen to. I was a very music. I was really into music and reading and writing and all the things I'm into now. And I would like, go into my room a lot and, close the door, put on my headphones and just like sort of sink into my own world. And that was one of the things that my family used to say all the time, like, oh my God, Cal is always in his own world. And that was literally just me, being just I sort of got close to myself in order to learn myself, because I felt like I got closer, I should say, closer to myself in order to continue to learn myself. And I think because of that, I have now a very good sense of who I am. I don't question who I am. I more so question now. One of the biggest questions that I have is, how do I make who I am work with other people? And that's the biggest question I'm in now. But when I was a teenager, a preteen, I just had to sort of like block things out. There were some things that I blocked out, and I think that wasn't necessarily a good coping mechanism, because I think I had like what do you call it, Stockholm syndrome or something like that. Is that when you like sort of like conveniently forget things?
Maybe like selective memory or something. I think
Something
Stockholm.
like that. I
I
can't
could
remember
I could be
exactly.
wrong though, but yeah, you're like so it's maybe like selective memory.
Yeah, like
But
I
yeah.
started doing that a lot. So I just recently started like uncovering memories that I forgot I had, which was a little bit scary. But I think that was my way of coping. Like some of the things I really just blocked out.
Oh yeah, your body is protecting you. It's
Yeah,
like we
yeah,
can't handle this right now. And I know from when we did my interview, we're both doing therapy. So I think
yeah,
we spent
yeah,
some
yeah,
time in
yeah.
therapy. So that's great that you're working through all that with a
hmm
therapist.
Yeah, totally. I actually just spoke to my therapist on Wednesday.
That's
Yeah,
great.
Wednesday. Wednesday we had our lesson. Our next session is the 14th. So
Fantastic.
yeah, pretty much every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Wonderful. And so sounds like going through all that did get you closer to yourself. So you got to like know who you are. Now
hmm
you're kind of working through some stuff, and then also, but now you're also kind of like, I know who I am, but how do I make that work with other people?
Yeah,
I've
exactly.
never thought about that, but when you said it, I was like, oh, okay. I feel very similar. I'm sure
Yeah,
maybe a
yeah.
lot of people do, where you're like, I think if you grew up the way you did and you're introverted and you're kind of doing your own thing,
hmm
you're not necessarily always assimilating, which is a good thing. But then you're like, okay, well now how do I kind of do that as an adult?
Yeah. It's that's literally what it is. It's literally like sort of like it's the same thing that I was going through, but like now as an adult, it's like me uncovering like the more mature pieces, I guess you can say, mature pieces of that puzzle. It's like the bigger pieces now. I when I was younger, I put the smaller pieces in place, and now I'm like putting in like the bigger pieces. Like now it's like, oh wow, okay. Oh wow, okay. So now it's starting to make sense a little bit more. I don't think it made sense as much back then as it does now. Like I think back then it was more of like a survival thing. Like I don't have time to really care that much about this. So I'm gonna stop caring a little bit and just like go a little bit deeper into myself. And it wasn't until I got into my early 20s where I started to realize that a lot of like my sort of repressed emotions started to resurface, and I
Mm.
started to get really really emotional very very easily. And I think that's what happened. Like I think I sort of suppressed a lot of whatever it was I was going through, and then like my late 20s, like after like when I was in college, I just like I became like an emotional sort of like ball of emotions, just crazy.
Yeah, like it hits a point where you can't hold it down any longer. Do you
Yeah.
have any advice, or we have probably listeners who go to therapy, some who don't, but I think I was lucky enough growing up that not lucky enough. I was lucky enough that I had a dysfunctional life that I went to like had to go to therapy throughout my life.
Yeah.
However you want to say that, but I'm fortunate enough that like I'm fine going to therapy and I like therapy. Do you have any advice for people who like? How was it for you when you first started going? Did you have any hangups about going? Like, how can we encourage folks to give it a try?
I totally had hangups about going. I didn't want to go at first because I felt like going, like a lot of people, going was like admitting that I um I had a problem or something was wrong with me or I was crazy. That's basically what I thought. And my ex partner is the one who influenced me to go. And we're still friends. We're still best friends, actually. And he was just like, you need to take care of yourself. Like you need to focus on you. You need to put some energy into you. You put all of this energy into doing all these other things and into other people. You need to focus on you. And like he kind of like scolded me a little bit until I was like, all right, all right, all right, I'm gonna go. And so I went, and I was like resistant to it at first, but I realized that when I got to my first therapy session and I started talking, it felt like so much like weight was being lifted off of me.
Mm.
It felt really, really good to get a lot of the stuff that was in my head and in my inside, like I was keeping inside. It felt so much better to get that stuff out. But it also felt like the more I talked, the more sense I was able to make of some things that I was having trouble processing.
Mm.
So like it like literally as I was talking, like sometimes I would stop in the middle of a sentence because as I'm saying the sentence and I'm hearing myself say it, I'm like, wow, this doesn't make sense, or wow, this does make sense, and I was able to hear it, and like the therapist could literally see it happening. So to anybody who is having trouble going, I know that it's really hard, like especially with the stigma that surrounds like mental health stuff and mental illnesses, and people thinking you're crazy, quote unquote crazy, and stuff like that. Like I hate that word. Um, it's not crazy. It's very normal because a lot of people need therapy and they don't go. It's not
Mm.
it's not it's not therapy that's unusual. It's people who don't need therapy who are unusual. Most people do, and and I just encourage anybody who's having trouble to just give it one try, and to just go one time and lay everything out on the table and like assess how you feel after that. And if you don't feel like a thousand times better, like something's lifted off of your shoulder, then it might not be for you. But I don't think that's the case. I think most people that go and usually go and they're like, wow, when they actually go. And it's not what you think it is another thing that I want to say. Because like a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to go and like, have somebody, talking to me, or like sitting on some couch and telling some stranger all of my business, or having some, having some person, tell me something about myself, or, they think it's like some type of help self seminar or something like that. Or,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, that's not what it is. It's literally just giving you ways, uh, techniques to help you cope with things. And it's so much easier that way. We get our bodies checked, we get our teeth checked, we get our hearing checked, we get our eyes checked. We need to get our head checked too.
Yes,
you
our
know?
head and our emotions, and especially in
Yeah.
2020. Like, if you don't need
Yeah.
a therapist in 2020, I don't know what's going on.
So
um,
much.
yeah. So, okay, we have so much other great stuff to talk about. I am curious about like your journey, like not necessarily your whole coming out story, but just like kind of getting into the gay world and what that was like navigating that. Also, when that led you to like the bear world in general. Like, if you can start kind of getting into some bear topics, I think would be really interesting, especially because you're like the what,
Yeah.
lieutenant general of the bear world
Yeah.
army or something.
Deputy editor. Um yeah, I kind of found the bear community. So, like me coming into like who I was in the community it was actually a pretty long road. Because like I started going out and stuff, and going out to gay places and stuff when I was around 18. And I was having fun, but at the same time I was like, I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. Um, Most of the people I was hanging out with, they were, you know, people who were of a smaller size. I always felt like I was the fat friend in the group, and I always felt like I got less attention than everybody else. And I just it was just weird. It just felt weird. It was like, yeah, I'm having fun, but I'm also like holding everybody else's jackets and stuff. I was like, I was as one of my friends used to tease me, Keisha purse holder. Um, he used to call me Keisha purse holder because like that was, I was literally like just this sort of like figure that was like helping everybody else out. And so I'm just like, when is it going to be like, my turn to like, have like some of this attention, or like. And I just remember, just always feeling like that about the gay community, to the point where I stopped hanging out with gay people and queer people for a while. I stopped, like in my 20s. I was hanging out more so with like my heterosexual friends and going to their bars and stuff, because I was like, well, at least if I'm going to be, an outsider, I'm not going to have to watch all these other people get like this sexual attention and stuff that I wasn't getting. So like I started hanging out with them more. And then like it wasn't until like maybe I was like until I hit 30, which was at this point about 4 or 5 years ago. I hit 30 and like I was like, you know what? This is where I feel like I belong. I started like talking to people like on Growler, and I started like, getting involved in certain things in the bear community. And I just sort of felt at home, because I was like, at least people in this community are the same size as me. And like, I don't feel like, the fat friend that's holding everybody's jackets, so like, and then I started to realize, once I got to the bear community, I started to realize, hey, you know, yeah, people actually do find me very attractive. And I think that, I finally they're seeing what I'm seeing now. um
Wake up, people.
but yeah, so it just sort of just felt, it just sort of clicked. It just clicked in place for me after not being able to find a place in the gay community for a while, and then finding the bear community. I was like, oh, this clicked, but it still has its issues. But you know, nothing's perfect.
Oh, completely. So, well, A few questions there then. Like one, because you said like, they're seeing what I'm seeing. Did you like when you throughout life, especially coming out and going out before you started hanging out with your hetero friends and bears, like did you feel you weren't getting a lot of validation, but how did you feel about yourself in general?
I felt okay. Like there were times that I would, sort of get down on myself and feel not that great. But for the most part, I don't think I ever like thought like, oh, I'm like so ugly. And so I did have issues with my weight going up and down, and like I would lose weight and then gain it and then lose it and then gain it. I had issues with that. So I did have some body issues, but like those issues started to disappear once I started to see other people who were the same size as me and see their sizes being celebrated.
Mm.
That sort of gave me the validation that I needed to like start seeing myself in a different way. Just start like seeing myself in the way that I saw others who looked like me, you know?
Yeah. How do you define like what it means to be a bear, what the bear community is? Like what would be your definition?
Well, there's two ways of looking at that, right? So traditionally, we all know that like the bear community was started to give guys who were of larger sizes, a space, because you go to like the twink bars, or you go to like the muscle guy bars or whatever, and you sort of feel out of place, or you feel like people looking at you like, what are you doing here, or something like that. So it started off, of course, as a community for larger, hairier men, hence the term bears. Um, but I think because of how open and inclusive the bear community has been, in the years leading up to now, um, it's sort of gotten a reputation for, it's more so about being like the people who are othered, or the what do you how can I say it? What's the word I'm looking for? People who are sort of like, I guess, marginalized in the community, or people who are like, not necessarily like unattractive or anything, but like just people who are not conventionally accepted as what the status is that they should be, or what
Like
they don't
standard or
the
something?
standard, exactly. They don't fit the standard or the mode. And so that's what it's becoming, more so than just like a space for larger, hairier guys. It's becoming like, it's becoming more than that now.
Got it. Yes. So it's like there's a big tent, so we let anyone in who is kind of just didn't feel like they fit in
Yeah,
to these other kind of buckets, and now it's pretty diverse then,
yeah.
to some
It's
extent,
it's
but
it's getting there, but there's still a lot of, and there was this conversation that happened on the BEARWELL pages the other day, where we were talking about, they were talking about Adam Lambert, and
yes, I just started reading that article.
yeah, and how he's not big enough, and or some people feel like he's not big enough. And so this is the thing that I feel about this, like, without totally invalidating how people of larger size feel, I think the thing of the matter is, any community where people have been marginalized, or people have been shunned or ousted, any community that's created for that group of people that's been ousted, they're always going to be a little bit more gatekeepy about, what the standard is for coming into that community, because they're the ones who've been shunned, right? So like, it's just a simple fact, like, we have gay spaces because we weren't welcome in queer spaces, because we weren't welcome in hetero spaces. And when heterosexual people come into queer spaces, they sort of get the side eye a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that's what goes on with like the bear community. I think you wrap that up with a whole lot of like, a whole lot of people in the bear community are larger guys, and they still are struggling with self-esteem and self-worth and image issues. So when you have somebody in the community that, who they feel like isn't one of the people that needs to be like considered one of the people who who've been othered. Or you have somebody like Adam Lambert, who's traditionally been kind of, well, not traditionally. He was larger when he was first on American Idol, but he kind of got like he kind of went through the Twinkie thing and like he became sort of like really slim and attractive and stuff like that. So you have somebody like that comes into the community, and people are like, "Oh, he's a bear." You're gonna have people who are gonna push back and be like, for the simple fact is they want to have the community be the space where their people like them are considered to be attractive. And if there's something outside of that, they're going to get like really, really shady or really insecure. That's not to say that's right. It's just understanding where that sort of action come from. And I think there's just a conversation about understanding that we need to have. Like, you have to understand, like, these are people who have been like probably really, 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 bashed and sort of, all their lives about their weight. And so they feel kind of funny and they feel uncomfortable sometimes with people who are thin coming into the community. But they have to also understand, like, this community is growing. And there are a lot of people, just because someone's thin or skinny or whatever, doesn't mean that they've never felt like an outcast. They've never felt set aside. They've never felt that, because they probably felt those ways too, in different ways. And the community is growing as a space for everyone who has felt that sort of like being an outcast. It's for everyone. So I think both sides of that argument need to look at it from the other perspective and say, this is why this person feels that way, but this is how we're going to come to an agreement to be just more inclusive and accepting of everybody. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we wanted. We never really wanted to create another clique as much as we wanted to create a space where everybody could exist. So,
Right. No, I think that's all really helpful. I think for a lot of people to kind of tease all this out, because yeah, it's hard to kind of define what it means to be a bear and what the bear
mhm.
community is, and it's changed a lot. And I think I'd love to hear your take on this too, because I feel like, you know, even it was meant originally for men who were bigger,
Mhm.
in general. And just for me, I mean, I didn't grow up very big. I've gotten a bit bigger as I've gotten older. So I have a
Mhm.
different experience from someone who was,
Yeah.
I've never been fat shamed as a kid. I was pretty
Mhm.
thin. So I think that you have these people too now who are like, hashtag thick, and it's like they're just kind of not working out as much or something. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, why are they a bear and I'm a bear? I grew up heavy, and they're, they maybe,
Totally.
and just by their existence, they're kind of judging me and I'm judging them. It's something that's
Yes.
all wrapped up in it.
You
But I
you get
think,
it. You get it.
yeah,
It's and I can speak from the side of someone who's had weight, who's struggled with their weight since they were young. So, it, I've always been larger. So it's like that thing of, you have to understand that there's a different experience that happens. And I think it's the same. It's very similar to the argument that we're having about intersectionality, and about how different experiences doesn't mean that you're not something. It doesn't mean that you're not a bear just because you didn't grow up fat, but it means that you have a different experience from someone who did. And we all have different experiences, and that's where I'm saying the understanding piece has to come from. We have to understand that, we all arrive to this same place in a different way. Now I personally do get a little annoyed when I see like guys who are like, who, probably like you didn't go to the gym for like 2 weeks, and like all of a sudden you're on like Instagram saying, oh, thick, THICC, and
body
it's
positivity.
and
Yeah.
it's like where don't like it sometimes it's like, yeah, you're sort of like co-opting this whole like wanting to be thick or wanting to be fatter thing, because you think that this is in vogue, or this is in style right now and it's cute. But you have to understand also, for people who grew up being shamed for this isn't a cute thing. This isn't something that you can just like, oh, I'm going to like let myself not, go to the gym for a few weeks and get a little belly so I can be a bear. It's deeper than that. It's not as as shallow as people make it out to be. But I think that's sort of the with stuff like that. That's sort of the annoyance of that, is because people treat it as though it's like a fad. Like being fat is some fad, and like if when it's not like something that people are considering cute anymore, then they can just go back to being however they want to be. Whereas people who have always had these struggles, it's not that easy for them. So I think it's just, like I said, it's about understanding where people are coming from. And like I said, just because someone is thinner doesn't mean that they can't be a bear. Anybody can be a bear. And people who are larger need to understand that
Mhm.
everybody can be a bear. It doesn't matter what size. And I think people who are coming into the community who are smaller have to understand that sometimes larger people just feel sort of uh, oppressed by you. Like you said, it's not even anything that you did, just by your mere existence. Sometimes, like your mere existence of being a thinner person, just feels threatening to them. And so that's the reason why that happens sometimes. I mean, it's the reason why the comedian Monique, she's hilarious, but she wrote a book years ago that said skinny women are evil. And it was just her talking about her experiences being a bigger woman, or being a larger woman. And like that's some of, you have beliefs like that, like, oh, skinny people are evil. And that's not the truth, but it's just because of people's experiences and what they've experienced, the oppression that they've experienced from skinny people has led them to not trust them or not feel comfortable around them. So
Which makes sense, and I think it's a sensitivity thing of
yeah.
understanding. And I do like the analogy you had about, you know, like heterosexuals coming into queer spaces. I think you brought up as an analogy early on, and it's
Hmm.
that I think we can all feel where it's like no, but this is our space. We don't have many spaces in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you're here, having a bachelorette party because you can hop in and then you can leave. But this is like our only space. So it's the same thing being a
Yeah,
bear. If you're like, grew up heavy, fat, you're like,
exactly.
this is our tiny little sliver of, the world. And now
Yeah,
you're coming in because, you feel like you want to be a bear today. So
yeah.
yeah, I think it totally, yeah, I think hopefully people understand that. I think there's a really good discussion here,
Yeah,
bringing
totally.
bringing different people together
Yeah.
to continue talking through it. What about how is it for you being a black man, a black bear, coming into
So
this
that
scene?
so that adds another layer to it. It's really complicated because it's like I said, I've dealt so long with so many aspects of myself, being like not fitting in, being black, or being um fat, or being gay, and all these different things. And so like whenever you add another layer to an already existing pile of stuff, you know what I'm saying? It always gets a little bit more complicated, and it being black in the community is another layer of complication. And I think because we all know, just because someone is gay or queer does not stop them from being racist. And just because someone is gay or queer and in large does not stop them from being racist. And so there is I think that there are instances of racism in the bear community, but they're very subtle, and it's not sometimes not so subtle though. When you have people hitting you up on apps like Growler and WBear, asking about your BBC before you even have a conversation with them. That's not subtle at all. But they're like sort of certain instances of subtle sort of like I pay attention to a lot of stuff, and one of the things that I paid attention to is my partner, who is white. um, I've noticed, like, on certain apps, and certain things, that are bear centered, he gets he gets a lot more likes and stuff than I do. Or like the pictures with him solo get a lot more likes than the ones with us together, and things like that. And it's very subtle things that people don't think are noticeable, but to someone who is Black in the community, they're very noticeable. It's very noticeable. People are like, "Oh, it's just likes, it's just whatever," but like it doesn't matter that it's just likes or just like some Instagram likes or something like that. But the reason why someone is not getting the likes or whatever is noticeable. It's about the reason and
Right.
not necessarily what's actually happening. What's actually happening does seem petty, but the reasoning behind why it's happening, it's very subtle and it's very sort of underhanded.
It's almost like a microaggression, but
Oh
it's like
yeah,
social
exactly.
media. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Stuff like, I mean, that's just one example. I was just giving that because that's like a very easy example to give, like social media likes, right? I don't let that bother me too much, but I have noticed, stuff like that. But it's just a very subtle thing, and I think like in order to really combat it, like we're really going to have to sit down, and people, white people especially in general, are going to have to sit down and just be like, how do we address these microaggressions? Like it's funny because like you can't, for instance, you can't tell a person who to be attracted to, right? Like you can't tell a person who to be attracted to or anything like that. But then it comes up that a lot of Black men do realize that they're not as sought after as like some of the white bears. And then when they are, it's by people who are fetishizing them.
right.
So, it's a really tough position to be put in because like you don't want to scream too much because then you look like you're throwing a fit over something minor, but then you don't want to scream too little because like one of my favorite sayings, which is by the author Zora Neale Hurston, one of my favorite sayings by her is, if you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. So so for that reason you don't want to be quiet either, but you don't want to be too loud because then you look like you just sort of like, so it's really weird. It's a really weird position to be put in.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it really is.
And yeah, it's one of those things where I think like having these types of discussions and hearing people's experiences are good, but I'm also hyper aware of not being like, you tell, like as a white male, you tell me how we're gonna fix this. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's our problem that has been created by us.
yeah.
So
So I mean, and it's like, I, because I'm like the type of person I am, I don't like to like sit here and just be like, it just look like I'm looking at everybody white and be like you fix it, it's your fault, you fix it. But at the same time, it's like it's not really my responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Like,
100%. Yeah,
yeah,
100%. But I think, you telling your perspective and your stories are what's important. I think
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for people to just hear and wake up and think, oh, okay, like I need to be more fucking aware of my actions, and just
Hmm.
how I treat people in general. But I think in terms of this conversation, I think it's important because we're in a community that we just talked about as being a place where it should be inclusive, and we are bringing people in who are othered.
Hmm.
So this like racism in the world, don't know what to do. But this is our community though, and it's like we're responsible. I'm responsible
Yeah,
to make it more inclusive and
yeah,
make sure people don't have these types of experiences. We all
yeah,
are responsible. Um,
yeah,
so it's good, I think, for people to hear, oh, this is happening here in this community.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that positions itself as being inclusive.
Hmm. Yeah, and like you said, that alone makes it inclusive. Just being able and open to have the conversation, to start the conversation, because once you actually have the conversation and not really and not shy away from it or try to act like it's not there, or try to sweep it under the rug. Once you actually have the conversation, the problems will start to sort of fix themselves. Like, but you have to keep talking about it. You can't like, just have one conversation and think that that's going to be it. You have to sort of push the point, because you have to drill it so that people understand that these things are happening. It's not just a figment of people's imaginations, but like this stuff actually happens. Nobody's imagining this, or nobody's lying. Nobody wants to be this. I don't know about you, but I don't want to feel oppressed. To say like nobody wants to feel that way. So people aren't just like making stuff up. This is happening.
Completely. And I really appreciate you for talking about it. And you're right. I think, you just have to keep talking about it, because problems that are difficult, or problems that you don't want to take ownership from, or even things that you do own, even if it's something small, like you're married, I'm in a relationship, I'm married, and it's like, I don't want people to talk about the things that I need to keep improving and changing. So I'm like, no, let's talk about other things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we also have to force it, just like we have to keep talking, because change won't happen unless you do just keep talking about it.
I just
so
want
I'll try to do
to.
my part.
I just want to like. I hope what I said was clear when I was saying like the reasons why people in the community. There's my anxiety, but the people in the community. You know, the reasons why certain larger people are so sort of like not as inclusive of thinner people as they should be. And I just want to make it clear that I wasn't like saying that they're right for the way that they're doing. I 100% believe that this community should be for anyone. I 100% believe in inclusive communities, and bears can be any size, shape, or color. I'm just saying, like, as a larger man, from my experience, I can understand why some of those larger people act the way that they act, which is uncalled for. But we need to get over that. Like all of us, we need to get over that and like accept the fact that the bear community, bears are many sizes. You have grizzly bears, just like you have koala bears. I think koala bears aren't exactly bears, but you get my point. um, they're different sizes, and they all belong to the same community, and we need to accept that it's moving beyond being about body type and body size, which it should have been from the beginning. It's moving beyond that and being about something else.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the clarification. And this is one of many conversations. I want to have like a panel. I want to like keep talking
Yeah.
and have all these really in-depth conversations, because they are so nuanced, and it's like you
Yeah.
a lot of perspectives. But what I'm hearing and what I was envisioning is like, it's the idea that you have like emotional scars, and
Mm-hmm.
if they're not healed, someone may brush up on you, and if you have a scar that's unhealed, a
Yeah.
physical one, you're gonna flip out, and it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Same thing with
Yeah.
emotional. So you may have an emotional scar, and somebody, somebody who's thin walks in this space. I don't necessarily get offended, but I didn't grow up being fat shamed.
Yeah.
If I grew up being fat shamed, I might have a scar and this is rubbing up against it. So
Mm-hmm.
part of it too is like, we need to also create a space to facilitate healing for everyone who's gone through all these different traumas,
Yeah.
so they don't have these scars, and that we can come together and have
Exactly.
because you can't just say, well, just kind of get over it and accept, you're heavy, just get over it, because we want to be inclusive for everyone. It's like, no, we need to also make sure everyone can be healed,
Mm-hmm.
and that everyone's being respectful, and then I think transformation can happen and change can happen.
Exactly.
It just takes a lot of people and a lot a lot of
A
effort.
lot of people, a lot of understanding, a lot of work, which is
Yeah.
something that a lot of people don't really want to do. To be honest, a lot of people are like, "That's too much work. I'm just gonna stay inside and eat like popcorn and watch TV, watch Netflix."
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot
Yeah.
easier. It's a lot easier to do that. But so I think this is just one of many conversations. But I appreciate you talking through all of it. And I want to
Mhm.
be respectful of your time. Uh,
Yeah.
so we'll just kind of go through maybe a handful of other just quick questions
Yeah. Sure.
in
Go ahead.
general. One is just, you've been writing and editing for a year for BEARWELL magazine. You've been doing the podcast, I think, since the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Would love to just know, because I didn't know it was that fresh for you, that you. I figured you were such a staple. You've been around for a decade there, but
Yeah.
only a year. What are some things that maybe you learned or experienced that were just interesting that you didn't even know would happen coming into these projects?
I learned that I learned that there's many different ways to solve a problem. I did not know. I've learned that I was a little bit more good at problem solving and multitasking than I thought maybe. I learned that as far as the actual job is concerned, I'm just learning a lot in general about people, and like Richard and Robin are great. Like, they help me out a lot. Like as far as learning how to you know talk to a producer of something to whatever it is, writing, helping to write press releases and things like that I never had to do in work because I come from education. I was a teaching artist, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. So I mean, and I have some experience with like doing these things, but not on this level. So they've helped a lot. But I've learned just so much about media and entertainment, and dealing with artists and people and entertainers that I didn't know before. So it's been a eye opener, but a good one.
Got it. It sounds like a lot of growth. Like you're like
Yeah.
you're when you're pushed to do more and take on more
Hmm.
responsibility, you're like learning and figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Anything about like the bear community that you learned, or like conversations you had that you think like our audience would just like to kind of hear these little nuggets and gems?
Yeah. So I learned that there are a lot of people carrying more baggage and more things than you actually think. That it goes back to that whole thing that we were talking earlier about imposter syndrome, and like feeling like you have imposter syndrome because we look at people and we see what they present to us, and we don't necessarily see all of what's happening on the inside and all of what's happening personally in their personal lives and stuff. So I've just learned that people are doing and caring a lot more than you actually think all the time. And it's like one of the memes that I saw a few weeks ago says, just be kind all the time to people because you never know what somebody is going through. So, and that's one of the biggest things that I've learned dealing with different people, that the different people that I've met and chatted with over the last year and a half, is that people have like some things with them, but it's what makes them human.
Fascinating. No,
Mhm.
that's such a good reminder.
Yeah.
Uh, all right, and then before we go into kind of like where people can find you and
Hmm.
hear your podcast and all that,
Hmm.
was there anything that like coming into this conversation with me and being interviewed by me like that you're like, I really wanted to talk about this, or I was hoping this topic would come up but we just didn't get a chance to talk about it?
No, actually, and I can say that very confidently. Actually, you actually hit everything that I feel like was important to me. So kudos to you for coming up with like some really good talking points, because you really kind of took me on a journey there. But it's a good one, and I think you hit everything that is of importance to the bear community and to what I do and everything. So yeah, I'm good.
We did it. And I think, yeah, we'll have a lot of these topics we can go deeper into. I think they're important.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing, because yeah, so I said so you're Kyle Jackson is your name, but then
Yes.
but your Facebook name is something different, and I
Yes.
was gonna ask you that up front because it always
Yeah.
throws me off.
So my name on Facebook was, so basically I am in the leather. Well, I'm also part of like the leather community. I don't own much leather myself. I'm being a leather man is another one of those things. Just like being a bear is more of a state of mind than it is like about owning leathers. I have some leather pieces, but not a lot. But I'm a part of the leather community. And when I pledged Onyx, which is a black, well, not, I shouldn't say black. It's a people of color. That's the wrong term. It's a leather fraternity for men of color, in the LGBTQ community, and it basically, I placed that in 2016. And when I placed it in 2016, I knew that there was going to be a lot of like there were going to be a lot of events and things that were going on, that I kind of like, I didn't want like my aunt scrolling past on Facebook and like seeing a picture of me in like a jock strap or a harness or something like that. Not that I was trying to hide anything because they're very well aware, but it's like, you kind of don't want your aunt like to be your family to be sort of privy to like, this kinky lifestyle that you live in. So I sort of decided. Oh, sorry, I dropped my light.
It's like 2020. It's
Yeah,
over.
2020. Sorry, I kicked my lamp over by mistake. Sorry about that.
Oh, don't be silly. I'm like,
but but yeah, I so when I did that in 2016, I decided to make another Facebook profile, and the name Aya July is my Facebook profile, and it's basically Aya was is an Egyptian name. It's the first Egyptian god of the moon, and because I'm a Cancer, my birthday is in July, so I'm a Cancer zodiac. My element is the moon. My planet is the moon, and I've always felt a connection to the moon because I'm very nocturnal when I do a lot of my work at night.
cool.
So I changed my name to that because it's the god of the moon, and then July is literally just like my birth month, July in Swahili. It's spelled in Swahili, so it's basically just like a connection to sort of like astrology and my African roots, which are things that I'm passionate about. And I just gave myself that name, and it kind of just stuck. And people actually call me that in the street and stuff now. So I was going to change it to my actual real name, which is on the page in parentheses as like my nickname. My name Kyle Jackson is on there in parentheses, but my main name is the name that I gave myself. And I was going to change it, but it's stuck with so many people that I just kept it there, and I haven't yet.
Beautiful. Okay, that it's such a beautiful story and
Yeah.
like such significance. And I've never even. I may be like slightly dyslexic. I think like when I look at it, I cannot even know how to read it, like the name.
Yeah.
And I was always
Yeah.
just like, never even brought it up to you. So okay, now I know everything. I feel like this in a selfish way was a good podcast for me just to know like the ins and outs of your life and what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm clear. But and also I'm glad that everyone else is clear on what you're doing and everyone who's listening because I really recommend BEARWELL magazine in general. They've been really
Hmm.
kind partnership with my group Pod, and you guys have written
Yes.
about us a bunch. You came to an event and wrote about us, which meant a lot to me. So
Hmm.
definitely always drive people to the website to read all the great articles and everything else
Yeah.
going on. And then you have the podcast.
Hmm.
So yeah, let us know and everyone else know like where do we find you? What's the best way to get linked up with everything you're doing?
Yeah. So the website, bearwellmag.com. That's the website. You can see all of the articles and everything there. Um, the social media, Instagram, Twitter, it's at Bearwell Mag. So at Bearwell Mag on Instagram and Twitter. www.bearwellmag is the website to read the articles and stuff. And you can also find the player on the website to listen to the podcast. You can also listen to the podcast like pretty much everywhere where you can listen to podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, all those places you can listen to the Bear World podcast. So yeah, that's pretty much where we can be found. If you want to follow me, personally, you can do that as well. Like I said on Facebook, my name is Aya July. There's I said A. Wow, IAHJULAI. So it's basically July. Aya July is my name on Facebook, and on Instagram it's cusp underscore oscillation. I know that's a long name, but cusp_of _oscillation. That's OSCILLATION. And that's another story for another
I was
time.
gonna say that'll be for part two.
Yeah. But yeah, you can follow me on Instagram there, and my Twitter is at um sorry, Kyle. I forget it. So I just set it up like not too long ago. It's uh uh I'll get back to you on the Twitter because I can't remember it. I
Oh
literally just
yeah,
set
all
it
good.
up. I literally just set it up. So But World Meet Kyle. There it is. There you go.
I love that. World Meet Kyle.
At World Meet Kyle. I just set it up because I didn't do Twitter at first. So yeah.
I know. I've a hard time breaking into it. Like, oh yeah, it's a whole other thing. But okay, cool. So a lot of great places to go. I definitely recommend. I think people are gonna listen to this podcast and be like, that guy is the best podcast voice. So I'm gonna go listen to that podcast and really enjoy it. Final question: what are you having for dinner?
Oh, I don't even know yet. To be honest with you, I'm thinking about having chicken though. I love chicken.
Nice. Or do you cook it or do you order out?
I'm probably gonna cook it. Yeah, yeah.
All
I'm probably
right.
gonna bake it. I don't want to do any more fried foods this week. So I'm probably I'm probably gonna bake it. But yeah, I'm gonna have chicken.
Oh, I love it. Well, listen, it was so good spending some time with you and hearing, everything you have to share and hearing more about your story and all the things you're doing. I'm like, I'll get all the links, make sure everyone has all the links to find everything. And
Yeah.
I'm really interested about reading your story, Boy. So I'll have to, you have to let me know how to find that, and I'll share
I
it
will
too.
let you know. I will give you the information for the book. Because that's the short story version, and I'm working on a script. I might be turning it into a film. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, I'm super impressed. I appreciate your time, and I hope
All
you
right.
enjoy your baked chicken.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, man.
Bye bye.